Hey guys, Akariss here, bringing you another Fire Emblem Heroes video. And I know that it has been a while, but this is more of a live environment, more or less. I'm not talking like Twitch live environment, but it's been a while since I've actually shown you something that wasn't pre-planned through images or recordings, and I wanted to make this a more of a learning critical thinking kind of environment so that you can take something out of this video and implement it yourself. The nature of Heroes itself, and with all the changes related to Aether Raids, means that it's hard for me to just like say, bam, here's a bunch of good units and here's how you can succeed. What we really have to stand by and think about here is actually, what units do I have in my barracks? How can I put those units to good use through effective strategies or formations that will lead to success? So this video will touch on those topics, and hopefully you'll take something out of it and improve your own performance in the mode. Now, there are plenty of changes in Aether Raids defense. I'm not going to cover those changes in full here. What I'm mostly going to focus on is how you can succeed, and this is mostly going to focus on defense, not really offense, because offense realistically got easier as long as you use bonus mythics and you have basically a good foundation of what works. It hasn't really changed much yet, of course, until we see 7 units on defense. But on defense, there are some big changes at play here, and you should prepare yourself for likely a lot of lift to be lost if you don't know what you're doing, or maybe you'll learn something out of this. So with that being said, sit back and hopefully take something out of this. Alright guys, so first off, if you just want to see some good old-fashioned AR offense gameplay, that'll be below me. I think there's also a replay in there too. So yeah, we're gonna showcase a little bit of that Aether Raids offense gameplay, which was before Book 5 changes. This here is live in Book 5 environment in Light Season, which has just happened. Now, this is actually even a learning process for me. Believe it or not, I kind of walked into this and where I shouldn't have. Like I didn't really change much on my defense until later on in the week, and then I realized why my changes would work. And I kind of went through this on the Twitch stream environment. So of course, if you really want to get that back and forth discussion and experience out of this, I always recommend checking out the Twitch streams and having the discussions there, which could definitely help you learn something or another. But yeah, I'm going to kind of forward this information onto YouTube, and hopefully you guys can take something out of it. So first thing I want to really touch on is what really changed and what do you really need to think about going into good AR defense mentality for Book 5. So the first thing you'll realize is now people in Astra Season can run 6 units using Regan, and even up to quad mythics for plus 20 HP and a bunch of other stats. That's one thing. So Astra defenses, or Anima defenses rather, got a little trickier, harder to deal with in theory. Like, that sounds like 6 on 6, oh no, my defense is going to get crushed. That's what it sounds like. It's not the reality of it until I explain exactly what's going on here. And the other thing to think about is now the bonus mythic that, like in this case, we have Triandra and Freya. So ideally, you probably want to use the defense mythic, like Triandra in this case, in defense, if possible, just because it naturally just reduces your lift loss by an additional 20. And that base is 100 now instead of minus 80. So by using Triandra, the base becomes minus 80, and every additional kill is minus 20 on top of that, plus any further merges or a second mythic, which would also reduce it. I'm not going to go into the math here, but basically using a defense mythic, if you have it, is a good idea, regardless of its merge, just to lower that base by a substantial amount. The tricky part is that defense mythic going to actually help you? That's the tricky part here. Stuff like Duma being so outdated as it is, maybe Sothis or Lif as well, makes kind of hard. It makes it hard to throw them onto a defense team and walk away with better results than what you may have had otherwise. This is kind of an original AR concept for me that I used to talk about, which was, why use defense mythics if you can just create a team on defense that literally can just win You know, just win. Like you there was the old case of like using, let's say, double Duma when he was the original defense mythic, the only one, and then there was Yoon as well. There was a case where those defense mythics were so low impact that you could actually design defenses, which I mean, I used to do this. Like Flyerball didn't have Yoon. My original Flyerballs did not have Yoon on them, and my original Cavline did not have Duma or Thrasty or anything like that. I used to use Naga actually on defense. So I used to use offense mythics on defense. And the case here is, does your defense perform better without your defense mythic, or even the bonus defense mythic, and potentially get you more wins than it would have using the defense mythic? A long time since then, obviously defense mythics have gotten a lot better and they are worth using. But originally the concept is, how good is your defense with the defense mythic, with the bonus defense mythic, and is it worth slotting it into your team, and will it result in wins? Those are all questions you got to think about. Obviously Triandra is easy to implement in a defense, but once we get into stuff like Sothis or Yoon or Lif or Duma, then things will get different, because those are they're the weaker defense mythics. So are they really worth using on defense? That's something to think about. I'm personally going to try it and see for myself how those results stand up, but think about that. Now back to offense. People who use bonus mythics on offense, they are actually allowed to lose a unit, you lose a single unit, and still gain the maximum amount of lift they otherwise would have had if they didn't have it, like they didn't have the bonus offense mythic. Now that is a big deal, because that means that people can sacrifice their units and get full lift. So what does that mean? It actually, like, it gets the AI started on your team. For example, if you look at like the gameplay under me here, if someone was using Freya, they could just toss in Freya into that ball of 6 units. The Freya could die, but then they might have like Air and Peony and literally kill the rest of the units, because they would be fumbling around as just basic cleanup. That is important to think about, because you really want to create now a defense team that is hyper aggressive. Really wants to, well, excuse me, stampede over your opponents. I'm not kidding. Which you really, it's such a mentality shift here that instead of like letting your opponent set up through maybe PvE strategies, Ophelias, mages, bow calves and such with dancers, you don't want to let them do that. You want to just crush them. You want to kill all their units, or as many as you can, by therefore saving your own lift, but you know, realizing that people will actually just sacrifice everything into your team now, and or at least a single unit, before they're even thinking about surrendering or using that ladder. So that is the mentality shift in defense. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my replays here, and kind of a shift I had from, let's say, a replay in the beginning of the week versus a replay I had later in the week where I made some changes, and then kind of explain my mentality shift here, which also incorporated the old way of thinking with AR defense, and how like just winning is better than just trying to snipe a single unit to win. So I'm not saying that Cavline is the best defense here. There's no way for me to prove that. Like there's, you know, it's good. There's stats behind it, but it could very well be a sleeper defense that I don't know of. You may have things in your barracks that are not Cavs, and you want to think about how you can truly be offensive. There's many ways to do it. Restore traps. Odd Tempest is in the game now. You got plenty of skills that provide extra movement, ground orders, flyer formations. There's a lot of creativity involved here that you can really create offensive defense teams. Offensive defense teams. So that's what you got to think about. I do definitely promote that there is, you know, Cavline has shown results. Restore traps show results. And usually mixed comps that also have like a range cav in the front, or multiple range cavs, show results. And the reason for that is because they deny space from your opponent being able to set up, because they may bring too many buildings, and now they're going to be bringing 6 units, so they have even less space to work with. And of course they can't run on follow-up turns because of so much mobility, so much movement from a defense team. You know, like armors can't catch enemies, but range cavs can catch enemies. So that's what we're going to think about here. I'm going to show you now one of these replays that I had more in the beginning of the week, and we're going to learn something from it. And I'll show you later in the week what happens once I kind of like thought about everything. So Cecilia here's on the screen, just to, you know, blur out the names, not like blur out, but like hide the names from my opponents, because I don't want to be like I don't want to disrespect anyone or call out anyone for their performance, which, you know, there's always going to be mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. That's not the idea here. The idea here is I'm going to show you how someone played into my defense without me properly thinking about defense, and then how that changes later once I made some changes. There's a lot of factors at play here, but it's important to think about how to approach the defense metagame and how you can reduce the lift involved. So in this particular replay here, you'll notice now that I've changed my defense, but that's from the original cav line, which had 4 range cavs. It's now 3 range cavs, but I've added Eldigan as a dancer. So there's a little bit of like counterplay involved here. For one, you'll realize, and I've talked about this before, Eldigan is a counter to Mila. Mila is a common AR offense threat. You're going to see her in plenty of people's teams because people will bring her to gain more lift. And she has a defense check which isolates dancers, denying assists. So it's important to think about that if you use a dancer. You want someone who has counterplay in that. So I have Eldigan. Eldigan with the extra defense counters Mila, doesn't allow her to isolate him, and he's able to get that dance off. Now I added an Eldigan, of course, and a dancer, and removed a single cav to create more aggressive momentum for my team being able to snipe more units. Now what I also made, like some changes from my previous cav line, was I had like Erica here, I believe. I didn't have Leaf. Like, these are all little things I've kind of changed, and I kind of just put whatever cabs I had and put them on defense. Like, this is like literally base kit Leaf. Ryan was actually on offense, and now he's on defense. So I just kind of just put my units here and hope for the best, which is not the mentality you want to go in with defense, because right away I'll tell you guys is you got to really think about it. Like, you got to take the full mentality here. And the thing is, bonus Freya is a bonus right now, so I should have taken into account. Freya is going to be in a lot of these matches. How do I beat Freya? So this player, you know, he's not fully prepared, but he has exactly what I would expect a player like him to have. Mythics, and a lot of mythics actually, and a carry unit. So in this case it'd be like Alphonse, right?
Pleasant dreams.
So here's where the problem begins. Now he did well here because he set up his solo condition on Freya. Of course, she has this encounter and she prefers to be solo, so that's the good news here. And he lined up green versus blue, which is beating Reinhardt, and Reinhardt doesn't win against Freya. So that was my first mistake as someone trying to design defense. I picked the wrong unit to put here on defense. Ryan is not the answer to Freya, but Ryan does have another place, which I'll talk about later. He's not like, essentially you don't want Ryan here without him to be properly defended or supported. So the reason for that is because I could expect Freya to counter him. Whereas if you look at the rest of the mythics, Mia, Leaf, even Ryan does pretty well against all the other mythics. So Peony, Air, and Mila, Ryan, Leaf, and Mia will do pretty well against those. But I forgot Freya, and therefore that's why this player could take advantage of that. So of course, I kind of had a little bit of a rally trap going here. I had Yoon come in, she sets up her own Chaos Manifest using Attack Feint, and Eldigan can follow up on that.
Let us dance.
So in reality, even though I know Ryan isn't the right unit here, or I kind of in hindsight knew, Yoon comes in to protect Ryan by giving him the rally and setting up her own weapon. So this still worked in theory. Like, in theory it still worked. That's exactly kind of what I figured would happen, but I didn't think it through fully. The problem here is that Eldigan had his B skill with Caldera Dance, and Caldera Dance means she got extra attack and defense. Now if you know Freya, that's a detriment because Freya like basically takes your buffs and turns it against you. Kind of, it's complicated, but basically that was bad, and therefore she dies. Very close, but she dies. And that was my kind of like, that's how I should have, that's how Ryan is covered. But because this happens now, everything kind of falls apart. The protection for Ryan is gone. Ryan is now vulnerable, and he doesn't really do much to Freya. In fact, very little to Freya. And therefore, I lose, or I'm losing. Like, that's a really bad setup for me. There's no Wings of Mercy set up for Brammy. Yoon couldn't do anything. I'm hit by a Tactics Room for Leaf. The player has space, and I'm not really causing much aggression anymore. So I just wanted to kind of showcase the beginning of this replay and how you can kind of expect a player to come in and take full advantage of your defense if you're not ready for it. So he's going to do pretty well. He probably closes this out nicely. And that's because he had a good start, and I didn't take the time to consider what sort of units my opponents might use. Thankfully, Brammy is true. But with that being said, I'm going to stop the replay here so that we can move on.
I take my stand here.
And show you how things change a little bit later in the week once I did reflect on a replay like this.
Maintain composure.
Spoiler alert, Brammy does end up killing Alphonse. But regardless of that, I would still consider this mostly a failure. Okay, and then later, I made some changes. Some pretty, bigger changes. To try to realize, in fact, we have Alphonse here again. We have the Mythics again, and we also have duo units. So that's something I didn't really touch on, but definitely having a duo hero on your defense just for the dual building is something pretty strongly I would recommend, because people do use dual buildings, dual heroes, and they're strong, especially like Lyn and Alphonse. You'll see them, so you should properly try to counter them, and that's through the use of a dual building. Now, it's kind of a similar scenario. We have our Mythics, the common ones we can expect. We have our carries and potentially support, but 2 carries in this case in the form of Lyn and Alphonse, and that's basically what we see here from our opponent. They, I would say, are likely pretty prepared. They have seals, and what you've seen here is pretty much the same formation, but pretty big, I want to say changes. They're good changes to how I thought about what my opponents use. So first off, Leaf with base kit, not good enough. We can't have base kit Leaf, so I made the change to give him Deadeye. He has that 1 charge Deadeye on turn 1. What does that mean? He smashes Freya. He smashes Freya because Freya lowers damage based on speed. Leaf doesn't have speed, so he gets a guaranteed Deadeye on everything, and that works really well against tanks that rely on damage reduction. Many of them. There's a lot of them lately, so Leaf with Deadeye ends up being the answer to something like Freya, plus a bunch of other tanks, but mostly Freya. It is there because I'm thinking about Freya. Of course, Leaf won't be here when it's not water season, but right now, since I have that option, I might as well use him, and there he is for that reason. Brammy had no changes. Yoon had no real changes. The only change she had was rally defense rather than rally resistance, I believe, or something like that. She still has her feint to set herself up, synergy with Leaf by protecting him, and now I've changed out Eldigan so he doesn't have Caldera Dance, and he has Chill Attack in B and Panic Ploy in C. I don't really have wings, I really don't have the fodder, so for me that's out of the option, but that probably is optimal. I don't even have Wagasa for his Lance, which is a solid option as well. We make do with what I have. This is how I thought through it. Now, the big change you'll notice though is we have Ursula rather than Reinhardt. That is a big one for me, and the thing for that, like why that's there, why that happened, is because I'm like, okay, so I want a blue on my team, an offensive blue on my team. The reason I want an offensive blue on my team is because I don't want to just auto lose to people who use red carries, red tanks, whatever that might be. There's a few of them, there's Fallen Ike, swords with repel, close call. I see them from occasions, and I just wanted a strong blue presence. And I said, okay, you know what? Ursula, it was on my Anima team, so I'm going to bring her over to the Dark team. And the reason she works so well is because not only does she have synergy with whatever school is in season, but that would be Cav School here, works really well to deny Freya if she's green. And through multiple sims, which I'm not going to show right now, but basically if you just go to the simulator and put in a bunch of these hypothetical numbers, you'll see that Ursula does really well because of Cav Effective Tome, and because a unit like Freya can't really do anything to avoid a Cav School in an encounter with Ursula. So she's lined up in that panic manner, she's lined up with the Cav School, she's got an Effective Tome, and since it's a speed check, not a speed check, but like she reduces damage through speed, ARD speed res as a budget option, she's only +1, with low speed res to kind of close that gap in speed reduction means that Ursula ends up being a big problem for Freya, or at least if she survives, if Freya does survive, she ends up losing near all her HP. Now, the last thing I want to mention is Mia was previously running like a miracle build to set up Wings of Mercy with QP, but because that's now not an option, I figured how can she still aid this team and still enable the dual building, because like I said, a dual building is important for defense. So I put Wind Sweep with Phantom Speed here, which gives her a solid, I believe like 60 speed in this case, even after being hit by Chill Speed, because of Swift Sparrow and Phantom Speed. So that ends up hitting the Goat, who can't run Null Sea Disrupt. It ends up working against Air as well, and many other units that otherwise can't run Null Sea Disrupt, like Brave Edelgard or Brave Dimitri if he runs his Blue Lion rule. Plenty of other flyer and cav armor tanks like Brave Hector as well can't really do anything about Wind Sweep, and they're forced to player phase. So plus I got the armor effect of Dagger, that's a nice boost, and the anti-vantage effect. So there's a lot of like little subtleties here that work together. But realistically, every unit on this team has to consider a unit like Freya and how it can beat it, and other common threats that you'll see. So something like Alphonse. Does every unit on my team do decently against Alphonse? Not necessarily win, but at least give that guy not an easy time. And Yoon is the only green, but you don't need to just win by weapon triangle to win everything, okay? So just watch as some things change here. I probably won't play the whole thing here, but just to show you what happens when a near similar team kind of goes in here. Unfortunately, the player didn't line up the solo condition of Freya, which is a mishap, but even had he done that, he still kind of would have been in trouble considering the amount of bonus attacks something like Ursula's about to get right now. He can't use his dual skill, Alphonse isn't set up. Same situation, Yoon sets up for Leaf, gets danced.
Let us dance.
Which is nice. And already a little bit of a benefit of using Deadeye.
So much fun.
Where like Nori and Seal wouldn't really do anything there. And because of the whole aerobatic situation, we have some really great momentum. Really aggressive team. This is pretty much why Cavline has still worked for me. So now we're in a situation where it's like, even if my units didn't kill, let's say even if like Leaf hadn't killed Alphonse, or Yoon didn't kill whatever was beside Leaf there, even if that situation had happened here, where he had more units alive, we've set up our defense team to kind of like knock on the door and not allow this player to finish his game. And therefore, we lower our chances of losing Lift, which in the end gives you better defense results because this pretty much happens every time. Now, I'm using Cavline as my example, but ideally what I'm trying to say is you just need to create defensive, aggressive teams. And Cavline has fundamentally always been that. I don't know, like with the whole 6 units coming now, people using all building offense slots happening, which is a mistake. You will generally succeed if you use these teams which just stampede over your opponents. And that's the kind of mentality you gotta have. I think now you can't, I think teams that are like in a corner, or you know, infantry pulse teams that maybe have like melee front lines, flyer balls with melee front lines, these teams are all susceptible to getting PvE'd, meaning a unit will just come in with like special spiral and just with a dancer kill your whole team. And even if you kill like a single unit, it won't matter anymore. They'll just close out the match, because if they bring that bonus mythic, they can afford to lose a single unit. So that's kind of like what I want to kind of say here in the end of all this. And hopefully you guys took something out of this and you can implement it within your own defenses. There's going to be more like this to come in the future, but I wanted to kind of just get you guys thinking for what you can do within Book 5 and your air defense mentality. So thank you guys for watching. As always, much love. See you in the next one. Peace.